Good morning, everyone. I'm Vineet Gupta, as I got introduced. I spent last 15 years in the space of AI and building products at companies like Meta, Adobe, Adidas. And now I'm at Just, which is a pioneer in innovation on sustainability. And I spent last 15 years in solving meaningful business problems which changed the world. And today I want to talk about one such problem, which is a dual crisis that we are facing. Right? The first one is the sustainability emergency that we are in, and the second one is the data chaos, which is stopping us to take actions on top of that emergency. So my goal is simple, right? By the end of this talk, I hope you'll be inspired to see how AI and human intellect can work together to solve such hard problems, which change your business, impact your portfolios, and actually change the planet. Right? Let's dive in. Now, let's start with why it matters, right? The planet is actually facing an existential crisis, right? And this climate change is not a distant threat; it's present. And Fifth Re, for example, estimates that by mid of this century, approximately 20% of global GDP would be lost because of climate change. That amounts to 20 trillion of economic activity and the work which all of us have done to build this world. And not only this, the sad part is WHO estimates that around 14 million plus lives will be lost because of climate change. And this is not about these metrics which you see on the screen, which are the headlines. It's actually hitting us right now. It is hitting our earning reports. It is hitting the investment portfolio. It is actually hitting national budgets that we are spending to cater to all of these problems. And wildfires and floods and droughts, these are not extreme events now. These are now the new baseline which is happening, right? And that is why managing climate is very essential with the same rigor as we manage financial risks, because now both of these are the same thing. Climate risk is equal to financial risk. Yeah. Now, one paradox here, which you would have heard in multiple of the sessions which happened, especially in this stage, that AI is often hailed as a silver bullet to solve sustainability problems, and rightly so. It can optimize, supply chain, forecast extreme weathers. It can help develop new clean technologies. But here is the paradox, right? These same models consume enormous amount of electricity and energy, right? A single ChatGPT query consumes around 10x more power as compared to a Google search. And right now, the data centers which are there are already consuming 1.5% share of global electricity and energy already. And this is expected to double in the next 5 years. This is, to put it in perspective, this is equivalent to adding another Japan to the world in terms of electricity consumption. And in this summit, we have heard a lot about how we can make AI systems efficient and using algorithmic improvements like mixture of experts and so on to make AI efficient. But I want to position us to the other side also, where the real impact, all of these are critical, I want to say, but one of the major impact is on the other side, where you can deploy AI to solve these meaningful challenges and make the world more efficient, right? It is basically the ROI equation that we are talking about. And what I want to say, the AI's potential is massive, but so is its responsibility, like they say, right? With great power comes great responsibility. So what matters now is how we deploy AI, where do we deploy it, and how it creates more solutions rather than what it consumes. Um, Before jumping deeper, I want to ask you one question. How many of you have been in a room where question was asked, we need data, we need climate data, we need operations data of companies, but where do we start? A raise of hands, please. Yeah. Now, you're not alone in this chaos, basically, and welcome to the ESG mess. We call it the data chaos. And let's start with some of the aspects of this chaos. The first one is volume. There are 400 plus metrics which are there on an average, which top companies report, none standardized, almost none. It is estimated that 70% of ESG data which is there lacks even definitions which are standardized, right? Now add to it the velocity problem. Companies report annually, right? This is too slow when you look at wildfires and regulatory changes and floods happening every week, right? So you need to take immediate actions. The third problem is veracity. There are over 600 ESG ratings in the world. One can call a company a saint, another will call it a sinner. They don't talk to each other. And the problem is non-traceability of data, which is used to make these ESG ratings. And the last one is variety, which challenges all of the businesses and companies in the world, which is multiple frameworks exist, overlapping standards are there. You would have heard a lot of these acronyms like CSRD, TNFD, TCFD, etc. Now, each of these have value, but it is also frictional to work with, and hence it's the role of AI and data to build that right architecture so that this should be useful. And one last thing I want to add is, which is a hitting point here, a lot of investment is happening based on this data, this unclean, fundamentally flawed data. UN estimates that approximately 3 trillion annual investment needs to happen to achieve the global SDG or Sustainability Development Goal targets, but that's being made on this fundamentally flawed data, right? So what do we need? We need a new data architecture, one which brings actions to life, one that brings decision-making to life and solves these data challenges which we talked about. And let's jump into that solution now. So how do we escape this data chaos? The thing is that we just don't need better tools or better AI models. Just like a computer has its operating system, which connects memory to compute, to processes, to data, we need an AI operating system for sustainability. And it starts basically at the bottom with the data foundation layer. And not just any data. This is high quality, traceable, compliance-ready data, and structured and aligned so as to provide AI the backbone so that it can perform. Right? Now, important thing is, if we get this layer wrong, right, everything above it crumbles. Basically, it's like building skyscrapers on top of quicksand. Once this foundation is in place, the next step is the AI engine, which we all talk about, right? We use geospatial APIs, geospatial AI, scenario analysis, forecasting, data estimation models, multi-agent systems which can understand personalized outputs of every company, right? So that's the layer which works on top of it. And we need to do it in coherence and not in silos, so working with an orchestration-based architecture. On top of this, the next layer of operating system is scientific methodologies, right? This is basically what gives AI its brains. This is the methodologies around impact valuation, the regulatory frameworks which are there, how to solve them, risk assessment methodologies, supply chain monitoring methodologies, and so on, right? And finally, all of these layers power the real-world decision-making of businesses to make supply chain monitoring, or investors to make risk assessment and other portfolio decisions, and even policymakers to build better regulatory policies. Yeah. Now, this is definitely a leap from reactive compliance to more real-time sustainable intelligence. And let's see now, how it actually, how it actually works in practice. So I'll show you some real-world examples on how we have deployed this operating system in portfolio analysis, regulators, and corporate scenarios to bring it to life. Now, before jumping into the use cases, it's important to bring to life or introduce what Just Impact is, because the use cases would be that. So Just Impact is a global leader in sustainability intelligence. What sets us apart is our breadth and depth across these 5 domains of nature and biodiversity, climate risk, social impact, standards and regulations, and the data foundations that we talked about. Yeah. And we are trusted by investors, major corporates, and even regulators alike. And what you're going to see next is how these businesses in the world have leveraged the power of AIOS for sustainability to solve hard problems. Let's start with the first one, which is one of my favorite examples. I call it the mine that wasn't. Now, you can imagine that most investors like banks and asset owners, make decisions on where to invest, what is the exposure of different companies, and etc., based on large asset data sets. These data sets consist of millions of asset locations of companies, like these are their factories, these are their mines, and these are office locations, and so on. And investors use this data to allocate millions or trillions of dollars of funds every year, right? But here's the problem. These data sets are often mass collected, right? They crawl, and automated scripts run which extract this data from the world. And that's where the problem is. And you see one of the example here. This, in one of the data sets, this location was tagged as a coal mine. And in reality, what you're looking at is a Starbucks or something in New York, downtown, right? And this is not just one example. We actually found out in our analysis that over 30% of asset information that is present in these data sets without using the right data rigor is systematically incorrect. So the trillion-dollar investments that are happening and allocation of fund is happening on top of this 30% flawed data. And that's the big challenge. And we need to, basically, when your mine turns out to be a Starbucks, it's time to rethink your data strategy and AI strategy. Now, how did we correct it is what I wanted to bring it to life. So we brought, the solution basically brings to life how a right data architecture and the AI operating system, which you saw, can solve this particular problem. So we built a proprietary asset verification system based on deep learning methodologies using CNNs, basically, which map features of, let's say, actual mining site into decision making on whether they are mines or not, etc. So what you're seeing here is an actual coal mine site. It's again in the US. The system pinpoints within the site, with 99.5% confidence that yes, this is a mining site. And what it is doing is it is looking at a combination of features of this mine, whether it is satellite information, industrial signatures, location metadata, which is there, to build a model and define that, yes, this is the asset which it is claimed to be or not, right? And we are doing this not for just one mine, right? We are doing it for 3 million plus assets globally, including power plants and factories and logistics hubs and offices and sensitive natural habitats of animals and plants. And one more thing, you can definitely see that this is the first scalable system designed to support such nature-based analysis. And because without verified ground truth, no climate or ESG model can be trusted, but now it can be easily done reliably. And as a next step, I'll show you how even banks and investors are using this kind of data to make portfolio decisions and optimizing their investments. For example, here you see it all starts with extracting the right data, as we talked about, from financial sources like loan data to company information and asset information, like we talked about, like asset location data. And it includes both structured and unstructured data, like annual reports, satellite signals, and so on. And that is powered by AI, the first step. Data validation, again, we saw how AI can help in data validation and cleaning it, right? Similar to the CNN example which we saw previously. Just after that, we build a lot of models for science-backed models for sustainability risks measurement, like physical risk or climate risk or regulatory risk, like transition risk. And then the next step from there is to run scenario simulations, and here is where AI can help in forecasting different climate and regulatory scenarios to make sure that we are building towards the right end goal, which is scenario analysis. All of these 4 components give rise to the financial projections. This is where probability of loan default, loss of portfolio given a default happens, or value at risk in a portfolio. All of these financial metrics can be extracted, and now an investor can take decision on where to invest, how to optimize their portfolio, and where not to invest, right? So what you're seeing here is the full stack of AI operating system that I talked about, all the way from data to AI layer to methodology layer and all the way to application layer. And this is how we are helping banks and insurers and asset managers to move from reactive analysis of loss has happened and then change versus a proactive resilience where you actually make sure your investments are going in the right direction. One more example I would just point out is on CSRD. Now, this is an acronym which makes a lot of companies nervous. But the good news is that the right AI tools and architecture, which we talked about, even the scale of this regulation can become manageable. To give you a bit of context on what CSRD is, it is Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, which European Union has launched recently. So it sets standards for every company over the course of time to report their sustainability metrics and material issues. It spans across climate and workforce and supply chain and pollution and social, you name it, basically. And while this may look overwhelming, especially for small businesses, we believe that compliance should be accessible and empowering. It should not be like a 6-month fire drill exercise. And here's how we solve it using the AI OS which we talked about. Our AI collects the data, reads through reports and the disclosures of a company, extracts both qualitative and quantitative indicators aligned to this CSRD framework. And what you see on the screen on the left side is the outputs or the numbers or metrics which are extracted out of these reports. And for example, a company like Airbus, which is the example shown here, our AI has identified that waste is a material topic, for example, for them to report. But it is not because of rise in hazardous waste. Interestingly, we found out that it is because your recycling rate has dropped and it's much lower than benchmark that it should be there. So it not only provides a number, but it also provides a strategic risk explanation and direction where you should change so that you can actually drive towards sustainable investments. And this is how businesses spend less time in grappling for data, but more time on taking actual actions. And over 50% time savings can be there on CSRD if AI OS is implemented right. Let me wrap this section quickly by giving another real-world example that shows how forward-looking sustainability intelligence can be put to action at scale. So here, you see NBIM, which published its report later last year. So NBIM is Norway's pension fund. It is world's largest sovereign pension fund with $1.8 trillion of investment under management. Right? They have committed to analyze nature-related risk across their portfolio, not just at company level, but at asset level. So that's what they want to do. They want to actually invest in companies where assets are less risky and they are more sustainability friendly. So we worked with them to assess the proximity of portfolio assets to high biodiversity areas or areas of water stress or areas where there can be exposure which can impact the monetary performance of the investments. And you can see that this is not just reporting. It's actually market shaping, market changing. NBIM has set clear expectations for its portfolio companies that you also need to invest and report such nature-related metrics. And I'm proud to say that just data and AI OS, which we talked about, played a crucial role in enabling this journey, right? And one thing I would say, when an investor like NBIM makes such decisions, it actually changes the game for everyone in the market. Last thing I would say is with all this talk about AI, it's easy to imagine that you can hand over everything to AI and everything to machine. But we know that the best results come with human and AI partnership being there, right? What AI does best is scale and speed and data, right? It excels at spotting patterns. Millions of data points can be understood soon. But the problem is, AI has its limit. It doesn't understand politics. It doesn't understand fairness. It doesn't understand social consequences, right? It might suggest closing a polluting factory without even realizing that it might be the only employer in the town, right? So you need to consider all of those aspects, and there is where humans come in, who bring wisdom, context, judgment, right? And the outcome of combining collaborative intelligence of humans and AI is basically smarter, faster, but more responsible decisions, especially in the areas which are more regulated and which can impact a lot of human lives and the world, right? So AI can light a path, but humans should choose to ideally walk it. Yeah. And last thing before we wrap up, one final step back. Everything I've shown you today, whether it is our architecture or our tools or the case studies, all of this is not a future vision, right? It's real, it's live, and customers and businesses and investors have used it, and it is working. Most of the industry today is still stuck in reactive or diagnostic analysis, and the challenge is the fragmented data and the lack of that operating system which we talked about. But with this AIOS, it moves the organizations forward, right? From reactive to predictive, and from predictive to actually prescriptive, and soon real-time prescriptive, right? And we believe that every company, every institution, whether large or small, deserves right for accessing this AI operating system. And we have built that infrastructure, and it is scalable. So here's my invitation to every one of you today. So if you are a tech leader, let's co-build the next module based on that. If you're a sustainability leader or reporting leader, let's embed this in your enterprise stack and make decisions, powerful decisions. If you're an investor, let's scale it together to your portfolio. And if you're a policymaker, let's again scale it together as part of your policies. Because the operating system is bigger than just GIST. It is foundation to how we move from the data chaos to a decisive action in the world. And we don't have the luxury of time. But what we have now is right tools. So yes, let's build the future together. Thank you.